Today's webinar is Keys to Unlocking Potential Revenue Streams. I've got Chad and Matt here. I've done a webinar with Chad before. It was one of our most well-received and most viewed on YouTube. So I'm excited to have him back. And I've got Matt Fanslow as well. I'll do some brief introductions, then I'm really going to pass it to these guys because they're really the stars of the show. So let me pull up my screen here, make sure I have everything I need in front of me. And we will get going. So Chad is the Vice President now at TOPDON. He's a ASE Master Certified Technician. His education background, University of Northwestern Ohio, where he's got an associate's degree in high performance automotive technology. He's got a really diverse background. He's held a lot of positions at a lot of different companies. Started out as a tech, working in the bays, doing maintenance, heavy repair. He's run and managed a repair facility, done some high performance engineering, tuning, part sales, distribution. So he's really kind of, been all over in this industry. So he's got like a great wealth of hands-on knowledge, as well as, a technical background for, real world applications. And he's a really exciting and energetic presenter. And so I'm glad to have him here as well. Thanks, Chad. And I've got Matt. Matt here works at Riverside Automotive in Red Wing, Minnesota. He's sort of the head diagnostic guy, also / shop manager. His primary responsibility is diagnosing drivability and electronic issues. And he does pretty much all of the programming, coding, initializing, adaptations, all of that stuff. Basically, if it's got wires and has to be figured out, Matt's the guy. He's been a tech in this role since 1996. So I'm really glad to have Matt here as well. Thanks guys for joining us. Thanks for all those that are tuning in on Facebook. And without further ado, I will just pass things over to Chad and Matt and let them take it away.
David, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Matt, again, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your insight. And we're really looking at the potential revenue stream, and that really comes down to keys. And we always think in the industry that keys are this voodoo that only locksmiths can do. And we want to talk about how a shop and how a technician can really get into this. And we're not telling you guys that you need to become locksmiths. That is not it in any way. But there's a lot to doing this new revenue stream, and Matt has been doing this in his shop. I have been learning this for the past couple of years, trying to understand how it fits in the industry. So hopefully we can give you some insight on how this process works and maybe how you can implement it into your shop if you see the need for this. So I'm gonna start this off with Matt, because Matt posted a video not too long ago about a vehicle that came into his shop, and it was a no start. And I think it was a Corvette. Matt, is that right?
Yeah, it was a Corvette.
Yeah, so kind of give us a little bit of background about this Corvette, how it came to you, and what the customer issue was.
So the customer, and to be a little more specific about the Corvette, is its proximity key, or it's a push button start. You don't stick the key in and turn it. And it had been stored for the winter up here, and because honestly, Corvettes do not make good daily drivers in the winter. Yeah, I know.
Shocking, right?
Even with the traction control on.
Yeah.
And so they went out for that first spring, fire it up, and it doesn't start. It doesn't do anything, almost like a dead battery, but the battery's not dead. And they tried to fix it, quote unquote, fix it themselves. Watched a few YouTube videos, and they slapped a new battery in the remote, or the key fob, if you will, and still no luck. So they towed it to us after Google search auto repair, found out that we do key programming and no start type stuff. So they brought it to us, and I noticed that the keyless entry does not work. And I also noticed that if I took the key and I put it into the slot, so most vehicles with proximity keys either have a slot that the key can kind of slide into. It may be in the center console, it may be in the glove box, it may be hidden elsewhere. Some of them, if you just get them up close enough to the button itself, that is where the halo or the transceiver, whatever technical term we want to use, is located. And then the transponder chip in the key itself gets excited to then, spill its information to the car and allow it to start. So I noticed if I put this into the slot, the car would then start. Okay, I think there's enough clues here we could probably diagnose it, but I went one step further and used a tool that allowed me to check the antennas in the vehicle and would the key respond. And I found that the antennas are in fact pulsing the key, or not so much pulsing the key itself, but talking to the key, because proximity key that uses the battery to send its ID. So I knew the antennas were working, the key was not. But since it worked in the slot, the transponder should work. So I might have a bad key, but what ended up happening is I opened the key up and they had put the battery in upside down. So when I put the battery in properly, the car was quote unquote magically repaired.
And when we think about no starts, we think about old cars back in the day, like 2014. Our no start thought process has totally changed.
Yep.
And all the vehicles, well, out of my 3 vehicles that I have on my property, 2 of them are proximity key, which means you don't have a key to put in the slot. Yep. And the last one is a bladed key, but they all have immobilizers on them.
And so, the symptoms are different. It's not the old days where it wouldn't even crank over, or it just would not start and you'd have the theft light just a flashing at you. Nowadays, it might be just a little red LED located maybe on top of the dash, and on a sunny day, they're hard to see. All the customer knows is it doesn't crank over, starts, runs, and dies, maybe doesn't even start. And so now you're getting this vehicle in with these symptoms, and you maybe jump in to check fuel pressure or spark or whatnot. And really the first thing you should be doing is looking at the dash, looking for the indicators, and of course, plugging a scan tool in and doing a health report.
And sometimes we can, even though we have a dead key fob, so if on some vehicles like a Nissan, for instance, and those are a proximity key as well, even if our key fob is dead, is there a way for us to start that vehicle and be able to at least drive it into the shop? I think you muted yourself, Matt.
You're right. Sorry. Yep. Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
No, there's usually, like mentioned on the Corvette, there's a slot somewhere, a pocket. It might be in the center console, it might be in the glove box, it might be right on the dash where the key can kind of slide in. You wouldn't normally put it in there, but that's where you could put that in there, that the key could pulse that transponder in the key itself. Or like Toyota comes to mind, you just push the button, the stop button with the key, and that will be enough to excite that transponder. So that's one way to kind of rule out certain systems on the vehicle by sliding that key into the slot. Now you can approve, the start circuit, everything, it can run. This is very much a theft issue. It could be antennas, it could be a transceiver or halo, or it could just be a bad key that's not, especially, when we're talking about proximity keys, maybe the chip's good in the key, but the board, the way it's going to broadcast that ID to the car is failed in some way.
Well, I think that we should probably break the key thing down, because whenever we say key, we think of the old school, like blade key, right? So whenever we're talking about keys for vehicles, we have non-security at all, which means they don't have a chip in them. We have, I would consider it low grade security. It still has a key chip in it, or the old resistor style, like the old Chevy systems, the Ford PAT systems. Those are pretty easy to work around, even with our normal scan tools. And then the high security keys. These are the ones that are not like a shark fin key. They have a milled in laser etched key on them. So we really have 3 levels of keys, and a lot of those times the high security keys are also proximity keys. So if you're a technician out there and you're just trying to understand the terminology we're using, those are really the kind of 3 different sets: no security, medium security, and high security. And personally, I kind of separate the medium security and high security at about 2014. That is kind of when a lot of the manufacturers, even non-high end, started going towards a high security key, which means you had to have a PIN or you had to program it with something special to be able to program that. So Matt, we talked about the no start piece, which is unfortunately very common. What other reasons would we need to be able to think about keys and program keys back to a vehicle if it came to our shop running? Because I've had it before where that came to my shop running, I did a procedure, and now the car don't start no more. And now what do I do? What kind of issues can we run into as technicians that would require us to be able to program keys back to a car?
Yeah, once in a great while, it's not too common anymore, but once in a great while, some sort of power interruption or power flicker, bad battery connection can cause the vehicle to kind of lose its memory, specifically keys. It doesn't happen very often anymore on newer vehicles, but it's still a reason that could happen. The biggest reason will be is you replaced a module. You've replaced a module with a new one, powertrain control module, or really, to speak broadly, and it's not to be evasive or anything like that, anything that's theft related, anything that the car uses as part of the anti-theft system. And different vehicles, that can vary from a couple modules to a dozen modules. And when one of those is replaced, the car won't start until you essentially relearn the keys or somehow marry that module to the rest of the car. And that's where these key programming tools come in extremely handy. You can program a module, you can use a JBox, you can use, even in some cases, a factory tool. Program the module, and you now have to program keys. You have to add those keys back, relearn the keys, if you will. And I find a lot of times certain tools, the TOPDON Ninjas come in very handy lately, super strong on domestic Asian. There's other tools out there, but I mean, there's lots of tools out there, let's be honest.
And one of the things that I'm seeing more and more is when you mention security, it's not just in one module anymore, right? It's not just in an instrument cluster.
No.
And I had a friend of mine in Florida that was working on a 2014 Ford. This is nothing special. It's a 2014 Ford F-150. And he had to replace the body control module. So to replace the body control module, now you have to program the body control module. You have to relearn all the TPMS sensors, and you have to relearn and program the keys, all because of that one module.
Yep.
So we're seeing security is not tied to just one. It can be in up to 6 that I know of on some vehicles.
Yeah, and I was thinking like Mercedes can get pretty crazy with number of modules involved and theft related or theft relevant. The other thing is a lot of modern vehicles, more the newer the vehicle, like maybe 2014 is kind of a good year range, might be slightly newer. You don't have a dedicated theft module anymore. There isn't that one buried module behind the dash or wherever that, on your best day, you could maybe replace in 4 to 6 hours.
Tear the whole dash out, right?
Right. Those days are kind of gone. Most of what I see, it's shared between a few different modules. Almost always the powertrain control module, and then maybe the body control module, and or maybe the instrument cluster, and or the transmission control module if it's separate from the powertrain control. Then we'd probably call it a engine control module and then transmission control module, but they're shared. Any fuel pump control modules, who knows? They mix them up and they talk to one another. And if one of them gets replaced, you may be forced to just either marry that module to the car, or you end up relearning those keys to the vehicle. And maybe slightly on a tangent, some vehicles you need more than one key. So the vehicle comes in and you diagnose a failed PCM on it's Ford primarily. You've successfully diagnosed the powertrain control module. It's bad. That wasn't the issue. Is you put it in, you programmed it, and now it comes time to learning keys to it, and the customer only has one key. Now, what do you do? And you could go down to the dealer, buy a key, and they can just, if we're talking about a bladed key, or really honestly even proximity key, they can cut it, or the hardware store and buy a quality aftermarket key. They can cut it, but you got to come back to the shop and now program it. And there, and again, we're talking about tools, key programmers that will bail you out.
Yeah, and that's really where this slide came from, filling the need, right? There's so many times now where we need to be able to pull a pin out of a vehicle. An example of that would be Chrysler, right? There's a lot of functions that we need to do on that Chrysler, and we need to be able to pull the pin. And before it was so easy, we just call the dealer up and say, hey, what's the pin number for this car? And the dealer says, hey, no problem. And they give you the pin number. That's not happening anymore.
So not the
Plus,
case.
Chrysler is using rolling pin numbers now. So that can cause an issue as well. So I guess really what we're getting to is getting a tool to be able to do that pin pull and that key programming back to the car.
Yeah.
Now, and I know that you live in a huge metropolis and you are absolutely surrounded by dealerships, and every dealership that you can think of is around you. So, and you have locksmiths that are just absolutely beating down your door every day to be able to get to you and to program keys for you, right?
Actually, the exact opposite. The shop is located in a town of 16,000. We have dealer support for General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. Nothing else. Everything else is at least a solid hour drive away, and in some cases an hour tow away. And we have two locksmiths in town. And before I started really getting into this, I called them up and I kind of, for lack of a better, term or whatever, I asked them for permission. How would you feel about me getting involved in this? And both of them, independent, two separate phone calls. First question was, do you plan on doing anything beyond cars? I said, no way. They thanked me. Because now they don't have to do it, and they have somewhere to send it. So that ended up being, really good referrals. And in some cases, they may cut, if I don't need them anymore, but when I did, they would cut the key for me. If I got the key, they would cut it. They just wanted nothing to do with the programming, nothing. Because that gets, in their world, for them, that gets expensive and it gets complex. They don't want to deal with that.
Well, and you mentioned the expensive piece. So I have a friend that has a car lot, and we were talking about tools to be able to do key programming.
Yep.
And he said, look, I have a Ford out here that has been on the lot for 2 weeks that I can't get someone to show up to program the keys to the car because they're so busy doing everything else. And a Ford key is not going to justify them driving from one side of town to my car lot to be able to program keys to it.
Yep.
So I guess in this conversation, you went right to it. We're not telling you guys that you need to become locksmiths. We're not telling you guys that you need to invest in a van and drive around to all these different locations and cut keys and program keys. What we're saying is there's an opportunity here for you to help your customers by making sure that you are able to make their car completely fixed and you're not waiting on a locksmith to show up in a week or two, but also the ability to say yes. So if you have a customer that comes in and says, hey, I bought a key from the dealer, but they wanted to charge me $200 to program it. Now you have the ability to say yes. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Absolutely. And like I said, the referrals from the locksmiths, the referrals from the dealers bring us, because everything they work on is not their car lines, right? They have used car lots. They have to service them. They get these vehicles either on trade or they get them at the auctions. They have key problems. They don't have the solution. Guess who does? The independent shop. So they're calling you up to stop in. They've got the keys cut and ready to go. They just can't program them. And you're flying in there with, God, it sounds like a commercial, but well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I use the freaking thing. Okay. So I fly in there with my Ninja, and, you know, sometimes I have to sit in the car longer than it takes to program it because I don't want them to know that I just did it in 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you mentioned the Ninja, and I'm going to have David go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about some of these tools. So the Ninja that you're talking about, that's a key programming tool from TOPDON. And when we look at key programming tools in general, the breadth is very wide. I mean, you can go off the deep end when it comes to key programming tools. If you want to become a locksmith, you know, more power to you. One of the locksmiths that I work with constantly, he says, I spend $35,000 a year in tools and updates just to keep all my different tools running. And we're not telling you to do that, not by any means. So whenever we look at some of the tools in the industry, if you're saying, hey, I'm trying to get into key programming to be able to say yes to my customer, to be able to have a little bit more of a revenue stream, because let's face it, there's money to be made here. Yep. Matt mentioned the Ninja. So it's the TOPDON T Ninja 1000, and this tool, it retails for less than $700, and that gets you your Asian and domestic coverage. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a tangent here and take it away from Matt, just because my neighbor is a tow yard. And I've become very good friends with him. If you're not good friends with a tow truck operator, you need to become friends with the tow truck operator. So he calls me up and said, hey, I bought 3 Fords and a Chevy, and I need keys for them. I'm like, dude, I don't have time for you. I am busy. I said, here's my key programming tool. Do it your damn self. And he did. He has never seen this tool before. I gave him the Ninja. I didn't tell him anything about it. He plugged it in, and he calls me up in 10 minutes. He goes, that was ridiculously easy. And it was literally just following the prompts, answering some simple questions to be able to program the keys. And on the Ninja, for instance, this one really focuses on the Asian and domestic line in the industry, because those can all be done via OBD2 for the most part. Yeah. Now, whenever we step up into trying to do Asian cars, that takes a different kind of animal right there. So Matt, if we wanted to get into Asian cars like BMW or Mercedes,
you mean
what kind of
cars,
things do we have to consider?
One thing is kind of, if you're familiar with domestic Asian, the way they do theft, specifically keys, is probably, don't try to apply that to the Euro cars. They just do it differently. And I don't mean like reading the key, but the way they store things in the modules. So when a lot of these cars, they build the car, right? And it gets ready for, you know, shipping out to get sold. They set aside, or they build X amount of keys, 8 keys, 12 keys, whatever. That's how many keys there are for that vehicle, brand new. And when you buy the car, they don't hand you all 12. You know, you get 2. And then there's 10 somewhere, maybe in a warehouse in the US, maybe over in Germany. I don't know. I probably shouldn't even say, because I am that uneducated. So, but anyway, okay, you buy your Mercedes, and 3 years later, you lose one of the keys. So you swing by the dealer. Hey man, I lost my keys, or lost a key. Can I get a new one? Okay, they're going to make sure you own the car and you are who you say you are. And then they're going to order a key, and it's going to show up, and it'll just work. There's no programming or learning or anything like that. They hand you the bag with the key in it and run your credit card, and off you go, and you hop in your car, and your new key starts, and you drive off, and the keyless entry works, and everybody's happy. What happens is over time, different owners, maybe it was a rental car or a company car, where they have a lot of keys, and they burn up those 12 keys. And now you buy it. You got a screaming deal on this beautiful European vehicle. And we'll stick with Mercedes just because. All right. You lost your key. You only have the 1 key left. So you go to the dealer, and they can't sell you any more keys because there are no more. You have to replace a module, at least a module, and then there's going to be 12 more keys created, and they'll sell you 1, 2, 3, however many. That's where these tools, specifically on the far right here under the specialty, and honestly, I think I can't say for sure on AutoProPad. I think Autel does pretty good at this too. It might be a little more hoop jumping than the specialty stuff, like some of the VVDI stuff that's aimed at the Euro stuff, the VVDI MB type stuff, that you go in and you pull the module out and you open it up and you access the circuit board and you hook up to the circuit board, specifically either special points on the board or a chip. And you're going in and you're editing those keys out. You're taking those ID numbers out. And then with a new key, presumably aftermarket or a good used one that you found somehow, you're manually typing in the ID of that key into that module. So now when you put it all back together, stick the key in, away you go. Domestics and Asians, they don't really operate that way. You know, it's more rolling, whatever. You can blow the keys all out, start over. You don't really do that on Euro cars. It's a little bit different. And that's not to scare anyone off. You can absolutely service these vehicles. I do. And, you know, I don't want to say like I know what I'm doing. Having the tools and doing a little bit of research lends itself greatly to succeeding on these.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were talking about is in the locksmith terminology is called EEPROM, right? Where we do electronically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. We're going directly to that chip and we're gaining access to that information directly from it. And that means you're pulling modules. And if you're doing a Volkswagen, that means that you're taking that instrument cluster apart into 100 different pieces, trying to get to that chip. You're pulling needles off. So we can go to an extreme in being able to do this. If you don't want to, then don't. It's however much you want to do and how far you want to take it. And you know, Matt and I were talking about this earlier. 100%, we're not trying to replace locksmiths. We're trying to take the business that we can provide to our customer, and that locksmiths a lot of times just don't have the ability or the time to be able to do some of these easier ones.
And
so
Matt,
no, this is one of my favorite. Yeah.
But it's no different than having your shop and you don't do wheel alignments, but you're constantly shuttling cars to, you know, maybe the frequency of keys isn't going to be nearly that of alignments, but at some point you're probably going to elect to buy an alignment machine and train in a technician or two to use it and keep it in-house. It's the same with this. I want to keep as much in-house so I can control the quality. And again, I get to say yes. I don't have to do any smoke and mirrors. You know, you need new keys programmed, I can handle it. Or they don't even know I handled it. I just did.
So we showed 3 tools here on the screen just a moment ago. You know, that $1,000 or less, that $1,000 to $10,000 tool, and then the $10,000+ tool. From your experience, I mean, you have quite a few of these tools in your shop. What, for people starting out in this business, trying to get into being able to program keys and pull pins on these vehicles, what direction would you push them towards? Spending all their money up front and blowing their whole nut on one tool?
Usually that's never a good idea. I mean, first of all, you do have to assess the capability you currently have. You may have more than you think. You got to research that. And second of all, you have to determine what the vehicles are you're working on. Like what's coming in the door. That may dictate which direction you have to take. If you're doing a lot of European vehicles, you have to go a certain direction, the more expensive stuff. But that's not the vast majority of shops. Usually, you know, most independent shops, other than specialties, usually dominated by domestic Asian. And in that case, the far left is a really good place to start because you gain instant capability and the return on investment is you know, not immediate, but it's very quick. You get your money back and then you make money on it. And then you start adding capability, again, based on what you're seeing, based on what's coming in the door or how you want to expand your business, right? And then we're getting into like shop management type stuff, right? What direction you want to take the business or your capabilities. But
well, and you mentioned ROI, and I think that's a big part of any business owner's, you know, playbook. We have to think about that return on investment.
Yep.
So we see tools like the Ninja from TOPDON at like $700.
Yep.
And then we see tools like from Autel or AutoProPad in that $4,000 range. How do we justify the cost of these tools, and what is your return? What are you getting out of a key programming session as far as payment goes and time investment?
I mean, a lot of these are in and out. We'll pick on Ford. Many times, so I have an IDS. I use the Ford factory scan tool. I have one. And if I want to do anything with theft, until we start getting into stuff with SDRM, which is I think I saw a slide about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, on a Ford, if you want to do anything with keys, anything with the immobilizer system, through the IDS, through some aftermarket scan tools, you do a 10-minute login. It takes 10 minutes. You're just going to sit and wait or go do something else, whatever, for 10 minutes while it logs into the system. And then you can add a key or do a parameter reset or whatever it is you're going to do, diagnostic testing, whatever. That the tools like, again, even like the Ninja does this. And of course the Autels and the AutoProPads and that midline, they oftentimes bypass that login. It's not 10 minutes. It might be instant. It might be 2 minutes. It might be 4 minutes, but it ain't 10 minutes. And so that speed, efficiency, of course, drives up your, your profit margins. And I mean, you got to charge for this stuff. In my case, people have limited options, and I don't mean that as a way of leveraging it against them, but hey, there's something to that where I'm offering services you can't get for quite a way, quite a distance to travel or time. So you should be able to charge for that. So, at the very minimum, at the very, very minimum, we get a half an hour of our shop rate. And depending on the system and the car, a lot of times it goes up to an hour. And I kind of check myself against the dealers a little bit, just to, I'm not trying to be cheaper than them. I just want to be in it. And even with that, I'm still oftentimes quite a bit less than them.
And when we look at the cost of keys, that's something to consider too, right? If we think about going to the dealer to get a key, let's just say a normal chipped key, not a flip key, not key fob or anything like that, the dealer's going to charge us $100.
Yep. So
insider secret, your cost on a key, on a blank key, is not $100.
No, nowhere near.
I just bought a pack of Ford keys. I think there were 5 non-programmed, and it was $18. I mean, it was just ridiculously inexpensive.
Yep. I was just going to say
there's margins to be made.
Yep. Really good margins.
Yeah.
Even some of the proximity keys, I'm buying for $40, $60. Some of them are refurbished OE. Some of them are, I would say, quality aftermarket. Don't get me wrong. You can always go to eBay or Amazon and buy some pile of junk. But
don't do that.
You can go to really good distributors and whatnot and buy a quality aftermarket key, save quite a bit of money. It may not have the emblem on it, but it works. And they, they feel like quality and not chintzy or anything like that. And there's a lot of money that can be made. And again, you're that shop and word spreads, hey, I just got a key, down at Chad's shop here. He programmed it to the car and everything. I was in and out, and it was half the price of the dealer, or it was a few bucks less than the dealer, and I got it right away.
So I had a shop down the road from me. I don't know how he found out that I had these tools, but he called and said, "Hey, I heard you have the ability to program keys." Well, yeah. What are you trying to do? And he said, "I got a Dodge Ram here, and I need to replace the wind module." So if you're not familiar with the wind module on a Chrysler product, that is where you put the fobic key in, and there's not actually a blade or anything that goes in there, but that is the wireless ignition node module, and that is the part that starts the car. So you can actually, with the wrong key, you can stick it in there and twist it, but it won't start because it doesn't sense the right key. But On Chrysler vehicles or Dodge vehicles, people love to hang all their extra keys and their weights and a 5-pound dumbbell from their keys, and that destroys that wireless ignition node module, the WIN module. So you'll be driving down the road in your Dodge, and all of a sudden it just dies, and then it starts back up again, then dies, and then starts back up again. So this shop down the road from me said, hey, I ordered the WIN module from Chrysler, but I don't have any way to program it. And the nearest Chrysler dealership to us is 40 miles, and a 40-mile tow is not cheap.
No.
So the process for replacing this WIN module is you plug into it with your scan tool, with your key programming tool. On this one, I use the TOPDON Ninja. You plug into it and you select WIN module replace, and then it pulls the pin number out of that WIN module, and then it says swap modules. You put the other one back in, you plug it in. It's just a plug and play, and then it writes the pin back into it, and it says, you want to learn a key? Yeah, learn a key. And then you want to learn another key? Yeah. Hey, Mr. Customer, how many keys you want? You want 2? Okay, I'll program 2 to it. Now, so I programmed 2 keys, and it took me 30 minutes or so, and my time's valuable, so I charged him $150. And he was ecstatic because the customer said that the dealer wanted $1,000 to replace the WIN module in that truck, for the module and to program the keys. I charged him $150. He had $200 in the module. He sold it to the customer for $700 and looked like a superhero.
Yep.
Are you seeing that same thing, Matt?
Yeah, very similar. Local shops, and again, I work really hard to maintain a very good relationship with my quote unquote competition. I really do. And I go around with a 3-fold flyer of things that we can offer them that their clients don't have to know that we were even involved, that they could bring it to us, or I can, in some cases remotely, or not remotely, but mobily, help them with, key programming being one of them. When they find out you can do that, how often does it happen? Not a ton, but with multiple shops over the course of a year, how many times does it happen where one of the techs puts the key in and breaks the key or tweaks the key really bad, right? And so they know you can help them out. That's a big deal. The other thing is I hope you get a kick out of this. I don't know how we're doing on time, but it shouldn't take long to talk about. I go to the dealers too, and I don't know them quite as well. But I went in there with my flyer and I was shooting the breeze with a service manager and a tech and a service advisor and whatnot. And the Chrysler dealer, I told them I can do keys, and so for whatever reason, I end up blabbing or something. And I talk about how I can pull the pin numbers out, through the DLC. And they're, yeah, whatever. You can't do that. And we don't need help with that anyways. We just get a pin. They generate a pin for us. Boom, 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 done. I kid you not. Maybe a month later, Chrysler dealer calls up. And this is fairly recently. And they are trying to add keys to a vehicle and they can't. The pin number gets rejected every time. And so they call me up because they can't. They want to order a new WIN module, right? The new wireless interface node. There's just none available. So they're wondering if I can help them out. If they got a used one, is there a way I could maybe make that work? And okay, theoretically, I think I could, but that's not what I went over and did. I went over and I'm sorry, it sounds like a commercial, but it's the tool I grabbed, okay? So I ran over there with the Ninja and I plug it in and I pull the pin number out. And the pin number I pull out does not match the pin number Chrysler was generating, because a locksmith somewhere, I'm sure not locally, I'm positive not locally, but the locksmith somewhere at some point, either that wireless interface node was replaced or they just, for whatever reason, edited it. So now I had the real pin number and they could program the keys back using the pin number I pulled from the WIN module and saved them. I mean, they already had a bunch of time invested trying to, but could you imagine that somebody's getting a new module over that and all it took was running over there in a few minutes, and I charged them a fair amount of money, service call, the actual, labor to do it, or the fee to do that. made out pretty good on that, and they're ecstatic. And now I'm a resource for them.
It's always good when the dealership calls you for help. That always makes it really nice.
Yeah, it's good for the ego. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we talked about the tools to actually program the keys to it. There's a second step to that, and that is the ability to cut the keys if you want to do that. That is a substantial investment. You can't get into a key cut machine for less than $3,000. It's going to last. So that's something that you have to figure out. For me, in my small community, it made sense because my local locksmith is a half-hour drive away. So for me, it made sense to have a key cut machine. Matt, would you say the same?
Yeah, and I kind of backed into it out of frustration, and I, as a tech, took on the cost of the key cutting machine. That's how much I believed in it. And again, I kind of had the blessing of the two locksmiths in town, and I just, it really started with Ford module programming or replacement. Needed 2 keys. Nobody ever has 2 keys. Customer never possesses keys. If they had 2 keys, the PCM probably would never go bad. I don't know, but they don't have them. I need one. So I know there's ways around it. I could have the transponders and some tin foil, and I can trick things and all that, but man, I could just sell them a key, and that's what I would do. And then they leave with a new PCM and a new key. So now they have 2 keys, and that's the reason I really bought the machine. And then people find out you can cut keys, and I put up a little sign, just an 8 by 11.5, regular white sheet of printer paper that I used Word and said, did you know, we cut keys and a few other services we provide. And that people sitting in our waiting room look up, they see that, and they're like, oh man, this is the only key I got. Or my daughter only has 1 key for her car. So next thing you know, you're getting key sales, key cutting, and that leads to programming. And it's not, you end up doing more and more and more. I was hoping to do a couple keys a month. Now I think I can honestly say we're over a couple a week.
And that adds up pretty quick when you're cutting keys.
Yeah, and I haven't been doing it that long. So it's not been a year. I haven't been doing this a year yet. I don't think I've been doing this a year. If I have, it's just. So it's building.
And this whole thing, you were kind of forced into it, right? Like you said, the module programming piece, you were kind of forced into it, and then it grew to being able to do even more.
Yes.
And there's a couple different ways to do keys. We're not going to get really into that. We're not talking about picking locks. We're not talking about originating keys. We're talking about taking a key we already have and duplicating that key and programming it to the car. My favorite way is cutting the key to the key cut code, which if you have a good relationship with a dealership, you can usually get those. Unless it's a Ford, then it just doesn't happen. So the last thing that I really want to talk about in our last 15 minutes or so, Matt, is there's a fear in the industry, and rightfully so, of people that have the potential to do nefarious things with key programming tools and key cut codes and that. So there's a program through NASTF, and it's called a VSP, or a Vehicle Security Professional. So tell me about a VSP and why it's important to have that as a technician in this industry.
It started out really for immobilizer, generating the PIN codes, getting key codes to cut a key. It's slowly expanding to more. And that is going to be the way we're going to be able to get more and more capability from the manufacturers. Okay, so for instance, Ford, I don't know why sounds like we keep picking on Ford. I don't mean to. It's just, this is the only one I've run into. This is the only one I've run into. The module was not replaced. Nothing was replaced, but just a firmware update per a service bulletin required me to use my VSP credentials to log in and finish the programming session. I think this is going to become a little more common. It grants us certain capabilities. So really what it is, I mean, yes, there's money involved. It's really not that much money, but there's hoops. There's going to be hoops to jump through. They're going to do a background check. They're going to verify that you have insurance, a certain amount of insurance, and the proper insurance. That I know that's a hang up. There's a lot of stuff on their website to help you make sure you get the right insurance. And then, proving who you are. And then you get, they call it used to be called a locksmith ID, LSID. And it's basically a code, like an ID. And then you're going to use a program called Authy that is all linked up, two-factor authentication. And that is how you're going to log into your accounts. And that is how you're going to program some keys to cars, factory tools, primarily some through the JBox, through a programming session. You're going to have to enter in these credentials, or you need that PIN number. Pick on Chrysler, you need that PIN code so you can add a key. You're going to go into the Tech Authority, and you're going to pay the money for the VSP, the security professional fee or subscription, and then use your credentials to allow them to either, usually it's another portal opens up or a browser, and that will give you that code, the PIN code, the 4-digit code, the key code, it could be a couple different ones. Usually I think like 5 digits, usually, sometimes 6. The key code is what you would punch into your key cutting machine so it knows how to cut it. But the PIN number, that's how you're going to access that. And then in some car manufacturers, you're going to need it to buy parts, theft relevant parts. Mercedes is the big hitter on that. Again, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of it, especially with ADAS type stuff, that you're going to need to provide them credentials through NASDAQ to purchase these parts. So don't be afraid of it. It's just one of those things we're going to have to do. A lot of us talk about technician licensing and how we might like that. Well, this isn't really licensing, but it'd be very similar to what we'd be subjected to if we would ever get into the licensing. So it's one of those things. If this is the services you want to provide and this is what you want to do, this is one of the ways to do so.
And as technicians, we always complain about the OE, right? Oh, the OE won't give me any information. The OE won't give me any access. The OE won't do this, won't do that. And guys, I encourage you to research this even more, because the National Automotive Service Task Force is our advocate. They're our go-between between us as technicians and the OE and the information flowing in between. So you have to think about it from the manufacturer side. They want to make sure that their cars are not getting stolen. They don't mind us as technicians being able to do that, as long as we're trustworthy people. We don't have a background of auto theft. We don't have a bunch of felonies proving that we're not trustworthy. So the NASDAQ and VSP system is our go-between. It gives us the ability to say, hey, hi, I'm Chad. I'm a good guy, and I'm doing this for the right reasons. And then the OE, through that process that Matt just described, said, okay, Chad, we agree, and we're going to give you the information you're requesting. And if you do it right, you're not only doing it for the customer the right way, but you're also covering yourself.
And it's fast. So when you get your credentials, you're now a VSP. When you request these codes, like a PIN code, there's information you need to get from the customer: proof of ownership, usually a photo copy of their driver's license. They have to sign something giving you the rights, to access this information, agreeing to let you do it, get these codes so you can program a key to their car or cut a new key, whatever that may be, buy this part. And it's all online through a portal. And I mean, lately, the last year or so, it's been fast. It's very fast to do, very easy to do. They've really improved that. So I can't agree enough. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, and with that, David, we're ready to take questions. If any of you guys have questions you want to throw at us, we're happy to do that. I like to do the stump the Matt question. So if you got any good automotive questions you want to try and stump Matt, good luck on that. So if you try and stump me, I'm the guy that calls Matt. So
Yeah.
if you have any questions like that, feel free to throw them in the chat box. If you want to raise your hand, David will turn you on. We are happy to talk with you and see your face and answer any questions you may have.
It's a quiet group today for some reason.
Hopefully we made it entertaining enough, but yet information enough for you guys. This is a pretty good opportunity. And like Matt said, don't be scared of this. This is good for everybody, and a good way to generate revenue, to say yes to your customer, and to get the customer back on the road in a timely manner, where otherwise we may not have been able to.
Matt, if you had to do it again, what are some of the things you might do a little differently?
Oh man. Well, I probably would have started out with the Ninja instead of some of the other stuff I bought.
It's amazing how much money you can get in these tools, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is I mean, I guess, what is training like? Or, if you had someone come into your shop and you wanted to pass this off to them and you were going to move on to something else, or if demand got so high that you had more than you could coverage, like what does it take to get someone knowledgeable and up and running on one of these tools so that they can, just be an additional profit center for you?
I think Chad answered that with his tow truck guy, that a lot of it's very easy, and the tools lead you through. Like when you plug into the car and you say what you want to do, all keys lost, and customer lost all the keys. You have one or two or however many keys are required, or how many you have. It tells you kind of what to do. There'll be some 5 steps or 3 steps, whatever, and you kind of read through them, and it gives you an idea of what's going to be expected of you. And then as you go, it prompts you to do this or that. Put one new key in, turn the key on, wait for the theft light to go out, take that key out. Do you want to add another key? Yes. Put that key in, turn it to run, wait for the theft light to go out, turn it off. Do you want to add another key? No. Put the first key back in, turn it. It really holds your hand. In many cases, really holds your hand. When things go complex, it's on those vehicles like we talked about, some of the Euro cars, that it can get a little.
I wanted to attach to that also. So whenever I first started this, one of my locksmith friends encouraged me highly to get this book. So this is called Auto Smart, and I'm trying to make it so it doesn't disappear. But this is a book all about keys and key programming. And basically inside this book, it has everything you need to know about the keys. It tells you how many keys that vehicle has to have. It tells you what to do, what not to do, what keys it takes. They're called Auto Smart, and they're by Michael Hyde. And there's one for domestic, and there's one for Asian and European. And somebody calls me and says, "Hey, Chad, can you do this?" I don't know. I've never done it before. I can flip into that book and say, yes, that's possible with the tools that I have. And I have the keys to be able to do that as well. So on the training piece on it, the tools are very helpful, but also having a little bit of background by a book like these AutoSmart books is a good resource to have on hand as well.
Yeah, and the training is rapidly increasing on our end. It used to be, if you wanted to do any training on this, you needed to seek out a locksmith type of expo or training class. It wasn't really taught to auto repair. That's changing, and it's not. We've brought this up a few times about this being a new service opportunity or new income stream of whatnot. Honestly, this is going to be in your bay. It's already in your bay. You're going to be running into these issues if you haven't already. These are the solutions, that you don't have to get it towed out or call in somebody mobile or a locksmith to come in and bail you out. A few purchases here and there, all of a sudden you're in it and you're handling these things all by yourself.
Do you guys market this independently of just, I know you said you put up a sign and stuff, but like what's next steps for this, right? Is it going to be a complete profit center focus for your business? Is it only for cars coming in? Like how aggressive are you going to be and where are you going to take it in the future?
As hard as I can go. It's part of the website, so it's searchable. Somebody searches for keys, we come up in the search now. That didn't take too terribly long to get up into the rankings. And then, like I said, going around, other shops know about it. The one hardware store that cuts keys, yeah, he can cut keys and he can clone keys, but that's it. And not all keys are clonable. So now, he, instead of sending people to the dealer, and then if it's not one of the big three for us, GM, Ford, Chrysler, we're that alternative. So we're getting referrals from the hardware store to do these key cutting, key programmings. Maybe he'll cut them for them, but send the customer and the keys to us to program. It's just kind of getting the word out, and then it's kind of catches on its own too. Word spreads that you can do this, and we get a lot of phone calls. How much for keys? I heard you do keys. Or like I said, they'll be just sitting waiting for some other service to be completed, or they're picking up their vehicle after service, dropping it off, see the sign. Hey, could you make me a new key? And you just like everything, right? You just slowly build up your inventory, and next thing you know, you get to say yes an awful lot.
That's awesome. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, and we are at the top of the hour. So I want to thank you guys very, very much, Chad and Matt. This was a great webinar. It was definitely, we always do a lot of stuff on management training and service writing and even some other technical stuff, but this is definitely something that I think, for the shop that is like, okay, well, what can I do next? I'm running efficiently. I've got my cars, my arrows where I want it to be. We're running at capacity. What are some other things that I can add in that doesn't require me to try and find another tech to hire? I know one of the biggest topics we've always talked about is shortage of techs. And it seems like, this is an interesting, easily relative, cost-effective way to, increase your average repair order without having to have an extra bay or have an extra tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's the small footprint.
That's awesome. Well, again, thanks guys. We'll have this up on YouTube hopefully by the end of the week, and I'll share it with you guys. For our audience today, Mark, JB, and Anthony, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And everyone else, have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah,
Take care,
thanks.
Matt. Take care, Chad. Bye-bye.